The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Ho, ho, ho. Yes, this is a live show. Yes, indeed. On Christmas morning. A very merry Christmas morning. It got merrier last night. I'll explain that shortly. No Tony show today, so we got 3 hours to chew on the Commanders' exciting loss yesterday. It was all for the good. And also what happened with New England last night and why that is so important to where the Commanders are going to draft. Also, it was 52 years ago today that we had the longest game in NFL history. A wild Miami Dolphins win in double overtime, and I guess it's somewhat ironic that the Chiefs are playing at Arrowhead Stadium today, which is where they played 52 years ago today, and lost a game that is forever remembered as the longest game in NFL history. We'll get to that and a whole lot more. First of all, happy birthday to Charles G. Lefty Drizel. Lefty turns 92 today, and it's fitting because with Lefty, just about every day was Christmas Day when he coached at Maryland. Yeah, it ended badly with the Len Bias tragedy, but he not only launched college basketball in College Park, he launched college basketball in this area. The late, great John Thompson said that a number of times, what Lefty meant to college basketball here. And although he never got to a Final Four, the excitement that he created, the showman that he was and is, made college basketball what it is in this area, not just with Maryland, but with Georgetown. And George Washington's had some success over the years. AU has been to the NCAA tournament a couple of times. This is odd for a market this size. You know, most big markets like New York are pro towns. This one, college basketball matters. It matters a lot. And what Lefty did at the University of Maryland when he came there in 1969 helped to launch what is really a cool thing. And I think, at least for me, I don't know about you, but for me, college basketball ranks number 2 to professional football in this area. Yes, the Bullets won a championship, but that was a hell of a long time ago. Capitals won recently. I'm not a huge hockey fan. And for me, baseball's still kind of a new thing. I know there's a generation now that's grown up with the Nats who've been here for 19 years, but we went 33 years without baseball. And during that time, Maryland basketball was a really big deal, including the back-to-back Final Four appearances in 2001 and 2002 under Gary Williams and winning the championship in 2002. All of that launched by Lefty Drizel. And so a very, very happy 92nd birthday to Lefty. All right, you know that the Commanders got beat at the gun yesterday in New York, which was a relief, really, because there's nothing to play for now except draft position. And they are early 13.5-point underdogs against San Francisco next week. You hope they lose that, which I don't see any way they win it. And then they play Dallas in the final game, and Dallas may or may not have something to play for, but I can't imagine the Cowboys coming in here and losing that game. So if they lose out with Greg Zuerlein kicking that 54-yard field goal to beat them yesterday 30-28, and just as important, the Patriots shockingly winning at Denver. The Broncos were on a roll. They got off to that terrible start, including a loss to Washington, the 70 points they gave up to Miami, but they seem to have it back on track. And against a 3-win New England team last night, you figured they would get it done, but they didn't. The Patriots scored 20 points in the third quarter to take a big lead. Denver came back, but Chad Ryland, the University of Maryland kicker, who's had kind of a tough year, he was drafted by the Patriots. He kicked a 56-yard field goal through the cold of Denver, mile high. I guess balls travel a little bit further there, but the 56-yarder gave New England the 26-23 win. And here's what this sets up. It sets up Washington as the team picking number 3 in the draft as of today. They have a 4-11 record. The Patriots have a 4-11 record. And you say, wait a minute. Wasn't Washington's last win against New England? Yes, it was, November 5th. And isn't it head-to-head that determines draft position? No, it does not. I was surprised by this. I thought, oh, well, since they beat the Patriots, the first tiebreaker would be head-to-head, and the Patriots lost to them, so they'd be below. No, it's based on strength of schedule. And the fact that Washington's schedule has been so bad, they played so many bad teams, it's slightly worse than the Patriots. So the win percentage of the opponents for Washington is 49%, and New England is 52%. Now, there's two really tough games left for Washington, two teams that have great records. The 11-3 49ers, who they're going to face next week. 49ers play tonight against Baltimore, so they could have conceivably 4 losses when they come here. And then the 4-loss Dallas Cowboys, who lost to Miami yesterday. That would seem to be a stronger schedule than what New England has left. They're at Buffalo next Sunday, and they finish up against the Jets at home. But when they do the projections, and I believe it's projected on San Francisco winning tonight, they're 5.5-point favorites. So if San Francisco comes in here at 12-3, which would seem to make it a stronger schedule for Washington, even so, it would project that Washington's schedule would be just slightly weaker than the Patriots, so they would be picking in the number 3 spot. Boy, that would have been a devastating win for Washington yesterday when they took the lead, and if the Jets did not kick that winning field goal, man, we'd be sitting here this morning going, oh, man, what might have been? I mean, you're talking about perhaps the whole next 10 years of this franchise's future based on what happened in these two games. The difference between possibly getting Drake May might be what happened with those two. Yeah, it comes down to that. So you want Washington to lose out. You figured the Patriots are going to lose out. If they win, that's all the better. And there's even an outside chance that they catch the Cardinals, who have 3 wins. The Cardinals have 2 games left at Philadelphia and versus Seattle. Philadelphia's in kind of a mess now. They're playing today against the Giants, so they're coming on a short week anyway. And then, it's possible, although Seattle's, fighting for its life right now, but Seattle won again yesterday. But Seattle might be in a position where there's nothing to play for in the last game of the season, and they might be resting a bunch of people. I don't know. So there's an outside chance to get to number 2. But right now, the way it looks right now, Washington is in great shape. If they lose the last 2 games, they would get the number 3 pick overall. I mean, you could laugh about this, but that's the reality of the NFL, and that's the reality of a season that died on Thanksgiving Day. I mean, we've been dragging this thing around here for over a month, and there's 2 games left to go. And if all goes well, they lose the last 2, and they're picking number 3. And that's important for a variety of reasons. Obviously, number 1 is getting the best draft pick. Number 2, attracting the best people. That might be the difference for a general manager coming here, knowing that he's got an opportunity to pick perhaps a franchise quarterback and also have the number 3 overall in all the rounds. That's good. And also for attracting a coach who might look at this as a team that has salary cap room, good new ownership, a good market, a lot of things going for it. So those were 2 very important games, the one yesterday in New York and the one last night in Denver. Washington wins in losing, and New England wins and loses in winning, if you get it. Let's get to some of the comments from the locker room. This is the number 1 question going into this week's game. Who's going to be your quarterback? This was Ron Rivera on, once again, deciding to bench Sam Howell.
And it was my decision. I talked to let EB know, and he was fine, and we just went ahead and did it.
Would you start Jacoby next week?
Well, we're going to put everything in and evaluate everything. We'll come into the conclusion very early in the week.
I don't know how the news conference schedule is going to go. Generally, Ron Rivera talks on Mondays. Since it's Christmas Day, not sure about that. So we may have to wait until tomorrow or perhaps even Wednesday. He may drag it out. Not that the 49ers are going to be sweating out whether they play Jacoby Brissett or Sam Howell, but he doesn't have to announce what he's going to do at quarterback, and they don't get back on the practice field until Wednesday. As for what I've been yakking about here for the last few minutes, the joy in losing, this is Rivera's response on that.
This is a kind of an awkward question, but some fans were rooting against you guys today for draft position. Do you notice that, or what do you make of that?
I don't make of that. I really don't. I'm going to show up, and we're going to work, and we're going to play to win. Everything we do is about winning. It got nothing to do with about losing, okay? If that's what they're thinking, then that's unfortunate.
Well, that's what we as fans are thinking, Ron. There's just no way around it. That's all you got right now because there's nothing to be gained by winning. As for Sam Howell, now this season was dedicated to Sam Howell. Ron Rivera saying back in September to John Keim of ESPN, quote, "I don't worry about being fired. If we go 8-1 this year and he fires me, and next year they win the division with 40 of the 53 players we drafted and it's the same quarterback, I'm vindicated. Send me my Super Bowl ring. That's the way I look at it. I want us to be right and see this community have that excitement again." Well, his roster is terrible. The roster building that he talked about doing over the last 4 years hasn't worked out well at all. The secondary stinks. The offensive line stinks. He traded away 2 highly drafted defensive ends. It's not a good football team. It's not a good roster. And now the quarterback that you dedicated the season to developing has gone backwards to the point of yesterday where he was 0 for 9 on pass attempts under pressure through the early part of the third quarter. Over the course of the game, he completed 6 of 22 for 56 yards, 2 interceptions, and a 1.7 passer rating. That's not quite as bad as Tim Hasselbeck against Dallas in 2009 when he had a 0.0 Blutarski rating. But a 1.7 passer rating isn't much better, and he took his 60th sack of the season. He looks lost out there. Even Rivera admitted that he's been pressing. Thought maybe he'd have the chance to watch Jacoby Brissett operate the offense effectively last week in Los Angeles, and now yesterday this is about all Hal could offer after yesterday's debacle.
I just got to keep controlling what I can control. I'm going to keep taking it one day at a time, and I know it's still early on in my career. I'm still a young player, and I just got to keep doing what I can to just keep trying to get better, and not let this moment define who I am as a player, who I am as a person, and I won't let it define me.
Well, he's maybe going to get another chance this year, maybe not. He is going to have to prove himself, I think, to a new coaching staff. Now, what's going to be interesting, and I don't know who's going to come in here and take over this team. I'm hopeful it's a team president, a general manager, and a coach. And the 3 of them, I would think, would decide on what direction they want to go with Hal. I would not be opposed if they don't find the quarterback they want. If they, let's say, to get Drake May or Caleb Williams, if he drops, you're going to have to move up to number 2, and what it's going to cost you to move up a spot, who knows? And I don't think that New England would be at 4, so I don't think Arizona would necessarily pass up the opportunity to draft one of those guys. But if you can't make a deal, I wouldn't be opposed to bringing back Jacoby Brissett next year and having him have a real competition with Sam Howell. There was no competition this year. This was Howell's job to lose, and he played well enough in the preseason to keep the job. But what we've seen from Jacoby Brissett over the last 2 weeks is that a professional quarterback can operate effectively. Now, would they be a division winner? No, but they might still be in the playoff mix. They might be around a 500 team right now had they gone with Jacoby Brissett and had he won the job in a real fair competition. Now, here's what you like about Jacoby Brissett, and if it comes to this, where the 2 of them do compete next year and Howell eventually wins the job, you have a very, very supportive teammate. I mean, you've been hearing all year Hal praise Jacoby Brissett and how he supports him. I'm going to play a lot of what Jacoby Brissett said at his news conference yesterday after the game in the 10 o'clock hour, but he's everything you want in a backup quarterback. And the way he expresses himself and the way he talks about mentoring Sam Howell, this guy's perfect for this role. So if you think that Howell eventually can be a really good quarterback in this league and you don't have the opportunity to take one of the top 2 quarterbacks coming out, then I think that might be a way that they go next year. It's going to be a rebuild anyway. This is not going to be a team that's going to compete for a championship next year. So why not? So this was mentor Jacoby Brissett, who played really well yesterday. I mean, once again, taking a game that was out of hand and putting it back in hand and throwing as well as he did. Let's see, what were his numbers? His passing numbers yesterday, 10 of 13 for 100 yards and also throwing a touchdown pass to lead that team to a game that they conceivably could have won. Here's Brissett on the question of whether or not And Ron Rivera says he is, whether or not Sam Howell is pressing.
Pressing? I mean, no. I mean, listen, this position is the hardest position in all the sports, man. It's hard to say somebody's out there pressing or trying to go win a game, you know, and trying to make plays. And that's what every time I watch him play, I'm seeing a kid fight for everything, you know. And like I said, it's easy for somebody to come up here and say, like, oh, he could have did this or he could have did that, or Jacoby went in the game and did this and did that. But, you know what I mean, like, what he's had to endure this year and what he's gone through and like these moments right now and he's still standing tall, you know what I mean? Like, man, I'm excited for this part of his career, man. I think he's gonna come out on top, and a lot of these questions are gonna be answered by y'all rather than him.
This is what he said. He told Hal after the game. You know, he got up there and he said, "Yeah, it'd be easy for me to say I just stepped in and did this." He says, sometimes it just goes like this, and he understands the ups and downs of playing quarterback. He's been around for a long time. So this is the conversation that he says he had with Hal after this game.
I mean, I told him, man, this is going to be the hardest part of your career right now, you know, and it's going to feel like, man, that you're in this by yourself, you know, and it's snowballing. It's one thing after another. It's one thing after another. But I know from being in this league, man, it's the good ones find a way to get to the other side, you know, no matter how long it takes, you know, how hard it is, you know, you surround yourself with good people. You know, I hope he leans on me as one of those good people that'll help him get through this, because I know I will. And you just go through it like that, you know, and it's no, I mean, what all the coaches say, it's no magic pill. It's no magic thing for somebody to go over there and say, Sam, do this and everything works. You know, it's man, you gotta go through it, you know, and you just gotta make sure that you got the right people in your ear. You know, you keep your confidence, you stay true to who you are, because that's what's gotten you to this far. And you know, I'm excited for him, man. I told him that, like, literally I got run off the field. I'm excited for this part of your career, because not a lot of people get this experience, man. And the ones that come on the other side, man, they have a better story than a lot of people. And I'm sure he'll appreciate, you know, this part of his journey at the end of his career.
Boy, if I was Sam Howell, I would, and I would be very, very thankful that I had Jacoby Brissett as a backup this year. One more comment on this, and we'll get back to much more on this in the next hour and play a lot of what Jacoby Brissett said yesterday. Terry McLaurin, who you got to kind of feel for and wonder, in a complete rebuild, would you think about trading him next year? Because it's possible by the time they get good, he's going to be too old. But he has always been a mensch on and off the field. And in the time of need, here's a guy who looks at Sam Howell, I'm sure, and says to himself, man, I went through a whole year with him, and what I've seen in the last two second halves of the last 2 weeks, if I'd had Jacoby Brissett, this might be a Pro Bowl year for me. But when it comes time to be supportive of his teammates, and this is why he's been a team captain since he's a rookie, he says things like this about Howell.
I got his back, and I know he appreciates that. And, you know, it's been tough for him. It's been a tough year for all of us. And, you know, I still believe in the ability that he has. He's shown a lot of great things this year. And, you know, even when he's back out there next week, you know, we're going to keep chopping the wood and try to help him out as much as we can. So, you know, it's kind of hard for me to speak for his confidence, but I try to do the best that I can to keep him uplifted.
I can't imagine that Ron Rivera will announce this week that he's going back to Sam Howell. He can't look at the guys in the locker room and talk to them about winning and put a quarterback out there who's clearly regressing, and you got a guy on the bench in Brissett who's been great at moving the team the last 2 weeks. Now he's come in at big deficits. Maybe teams loosen up their defense a little bit. I don't know how it would look from the start of the game. But your best chance to win, and it's not much of a chance, but your best chance to win next week is with Jacoby Brissett. So we may have seen the last of Sam Howell this year. We'll have to see. But what you're hearing publicly, at least from teammates, is they still got his back. We'll see. Coming up, Jerome Bettis on the Dan Patrick Show. A couple of funny stories about the way the game has changed. And also, how do you judge running backs today? Adrian Peterson will go into the Pro Football Hall of Fame as soon as he's eligible. Either it's 2-3 years from now. But what about running backs for the future? Numbers are different now than they used to be. And Emmitt Smith's record, that seems to be very safe. What Jerome Bettis, who's in the Hall of Fame, says about the future for Hall of Famers at the running back position. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Merry Christmas live show here on ESPN 630, and we're live until noon. Tony's back tomorrow. I think Tony's doing a Tuesday and a Wednesday show this week. Not sure about the rest of the week, but we got plenty of time to yak about the Commanders and the future of Sam Howell, which looks a lot bleaker today than it did a few weeks ago. And now there's good news coming from what happened last night, which makes it even more possible that there's going to be, I believe, a new quarterback here next year, and it could be a rookie by the name of Caleb Williams or Drake May. We'll see. They may go 1-2 or may not. And there may be a deal for the Commanders to move up. A lot can happen between now and April, but a lot of good things happening yesterday with the Jets finding a way to win after almost blowing that lead that they had, the 20-point lead at the half, and coming back to win. And then the Patriots shocking the Broncos last night. Broncos looked like they were on a roll to the playoffs, and Patriots beat them with a field goal from Chad Ryland, former University of Maryland kicker, 56-yarder. And if you're not up to speed on this, right now, Washington holds the number 3 pick in the draft. Even though they have the same record as the Patriots and they beat the Patriots, the tiebreaker is strength of schedule. And Washington's strength of schedule is slightly weaker than the Patriots. In other words, they're so bad they've lost to more bad teams than the Patriots, and they got 2 good teams to finish up with, and the Patriots' last 2 are not as stout. They play at Buffalo on Sunday and then against the Jets in the final game. But based on projections, Washington's strength of schedule will be just slightly weaker. So if they lose to San Francisco and Dallas, at the moment, it looks like they'll be picking number 3 with a slight possibility that Arizona could win another game, and Arizona would drop to the number 3 spot. And Arizona's strength of schedule is significantly better than Washington. 55% their opponents have won, despite their record being 3-12. So if Arizona wins one of the last 2 at Philadelphia or against Seattle, Washington could be as high as number 2 in the draft. Not too shabby. Jerome Bettis. Well, it is shabby, but it's a good shabby, right? I guess that's the way you look at it. Jerome Bettis on the Dan Patrick Show. I'm not sure why he didn't last at ESPN. I thought he was pretty good on the air. He worked for them for a few years after he retired. I guess he's involved in a number of other things now, including going back to school. You know, he, I believe in the spring, graduated from Notre Dame, fulfilling a promise that he made to his mother. You know, he left school after 3 years, got drafted by the Los Angeles Rams, who traded him to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the rest is history. Is now Jerome Bettis is in the Hall of Fame. Now, you might say it's marginal that he's a Hall of Famer, and if he came along today, he wouldn't be a Hall of Famer because the emphasis is on the passing game instead of the running game. And so while Adrian Peterson is a slam dunk to get in the Hall of Fame when he's eligible, the other running backs that are retiring, I mean, who knows? Because they're not the stars that they used to be. They don't get paid like they used to. Peterson made over $100 million during his career. They don't pay running backs like that anymore. So the question to Bettis from Dan Patrick is, how do we judge running backs moving forward?
You see the receivers, the goal line has been moved. And I say that because I've got a guy who's his goal line has been moved, and Hines Ward. He played in an era where we ran the football, right? But he was one of the best in that era. He did it all. And then at the end of his era, the goal line moved because the goalpost moved, rather, because now you got all these guys, catching 150, 120 balls a year. Well, he was in an era where when you caught 85 balls a year, that put you at the top of the league. So now his numbers are skewed because he kind of was in both of those eras. So I think what you look at with the running back is going to be a different era in terms of the numbers. So you're going to look at it a different way, and you're going to look at those numbers a different way because it is a passing era.
Hines Ward is a Hall of Famer. And you know what I would do if I'm Mike Tomlin? I ask Hines Ward to come in to teach my wide receivers how to be tough and be multidimensional. Not just come out there. What is it about diva receivers in Pittsburgh uniform? I'm like, what's going on here? That's not a diva town.
It's not. It's not. It's a blue collar town with people who love to roll their sleeves up and go to work. So yeah, it's an issue. It's a concern. But that's one of those, because you don't have that guy to say, hey man, listen, get your ass in gear. Let's go, man.
Bring in Hines Ward.
That's it.
Just bring him in, or just show video of Hines Ward and just say that's all you got to show.
That's what I would do. That's what I would do. No doubt about it.
Did Hines ever hit you accidentally?
He hit me all the time. We always had a little thing we would do that, about touchdowns, whoever scored the touchdown, right? And so we would yell, no, if he was going in or if I was going in. And it was the funniest thing because everybody thought we hated each other, but it was this little thing that we used to do, trying to beat each other to touchdown. So there was maybe a time or two where he said he was trying to help push me in the end zone. He was just giving me a shot.
So that's part one of Jerome Bettis with Dan Patrick about how we're judging players. Wide receivers have had to be judged differently. You look at overall numbers. Lynn Swann, during his career, I think caught around 350 passes. Jerry Rice has over 1,500. They're both Hall of Famers. They both won Super Bowls. But the game was different. It was different when Lynn Swann played. And I think what's put him in the Hall of Fame is his signature catches were in the Super Bowls. He made two unbelievable catches, one of them in Super Bowl 10 and the other one in Super Bowl 13 or 14. Just incredible catches. And he was a great, great player and deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. But if you do it on numbers, it's not even close. You wouldn't even get a second glance if you retired now with 350 catches. But that's the way the game has changed, and now it's gone to a passing game. So this is, how you have to look at it, and you have to also, look at wide receivers like Hines Ward, who was a great player, who could do a lot of different things, who threw a touchdown pass at a Super Bowl, those kind of things, and you just can't really judge them on numbers because the numbers get more and more insane. 1,000 catches, wow! When Art Monk got to 940, wow! And then Jerry Rice blew by him, almost doubled him. So. It's different. Second part from Bettis, and it's about the physical nature of the game now. And, boy, the way that they call roughing the passer, you breathe on a quarterback, you get roughing the passer. It's crazy. I get to what Micah Parsons said about a roughing call that he got in yesterday's Cowboys loss to the Dolphins, which is probably going to get him fined. But this was Bettis on how the game has changed and the physical nature of it, and a pretty good story about Brian Urlacher.
I like that Bus told me one time a couple of years ago that he could actually hear a guy kind of whimper when he ran into him, a defensive player, right?
Yes, that was fun because obviously you don't get that many opportunities.
Wait, but how did it sound when you run into this defensive player?
You see him and you're breaking their will, so you can kind of hear it. It's like, and it's just a long hurt that you can kind of feel. And when you look them in the eyes, then they don't want to look at you. That's when you know you have broken their will. And you don't even have to worry about that guy anymore. He's going to make it look like he's trying to dive, but he's diving straight to the ground. He wants you to jump over.
We bring up your run against Brian Urlacher. Whenever we see Urlacher, we always bring up the Jerome Bettis run, and he's like, oh, why are you going to bring that up? We bring up when Tom Brady shifted, kind of deked him there. And then we always bring up you running over Urlacher.
Yeah, he's pissed off about that to this day. But what I tell him that, hey, think about this. We exchanged shoes after the game. So he has the shoes that ran him over. So how many guys in the history of the game have the actual shoes from the guy that ran you over? You can say, you know what, these are the shoes.
But what's weird is when he lies down to go to sleep, he puts those shoes on his chest because that's what he remembers about you running him over.
Well, he knows where they fit. He's got to kind of knows where to put them, right?
Wait, why didn't you
He's
exchange?
going to kill me. He's going to kill me. You know that, right?
Why?
When I see him,
he's not, because we saw what happened on the football field. But why didn't you exchange jerseys? Did you ever do that when you played?
You know what? I did a little bit, not a whole lot. It was hard for me to get the jersey off. So So I wasn't doing much exchanging from that standpoint. So the shoes were the right thing to do. And what I did was, a lot of guys do the jerseys. And so I thought so much of Brian that I went into their locker room afterwards out of respect for him and wanted to exchange the shoes because I felt that there was some things that are especially you can get a jersey from a guy, but when you get somebody's shoes, it means something and it shows something. So I wanted to do something a little different. So I exchanged different things with different people.
I'm sure Urlacher saw you coming into the locker room. It's like, you're the last guy he wants to see coming in. How about you send him a Christmas card? Not, hey, Brian, here's the shoes I ran you over with.
The key is to immediately get right back in there and make them feel good so that they don't hate you. So the longer you go without that connection, they get madder and madder, right? They get more pissed off. So I was glad I diffused it early.
But you never did this with
you
didn't do this with Ray Lewis, did you?
No, absolutely not. The Ravens. I would not be caught dead in that locker room, I tell you that. But
well, no, you might be caught dead in that locker room.
That's right. I would be dead if I was in the locker room. I promise you that. But I will say this about Ray Lewis. We have become great friends. And we were friends then. We just were friends that really didn't speak to each other. But we have become great friends since our time on the field.
That's Jerome Bettis on the Dan Patrick Show. Old war stories. I love listening to old football players tell war stories of back in the day. And it is a different game. And what happened yesterday between the Dolphins and the Cowboys 20 years ago, oh, God, if you watch YouTube video of games that were played 20 and 30 years ago, it's mind-blowing. I was looking back at the Body Bag Bowl. Maybe that's the ultimate, but that took place in 1989. It was between the then Redskins and the Philadelphia Eagles, and it was famous for the game where the Eagles said, they're taking so many guys off the field, they should put them in body bags. That's the game where Brian Mitchell had to play quarterback because they ran out of him. The Eagles were knocking him out left and right, and you could hit the quarterback then. You can't do it now. And I watched almost all of the Cowboys-Dolphins game yesterday, and in the second quarter, Micah Parsons was flagged on a 2nd and 1 from the Cowboys' 9 when he knocked down Tua Tagovailoa after he had completed a pass or thrown a pass intended for Cedric Wilson that was incomplete. An official threw a flag, and Parsons was caught on the microphone saying something naughty, and he had to be pulled away from the official by teammate DeMarcus Lawrence. And he said after the game, this is Parsons, it's mind-blowing the things that are getting called, the positions we get put in. We just got to learn to fight the adversity, and I know a lot of it is BS. It's football plays, but it's the world we live in. We got the star on the helmet. So he's saying that the referees are against them because of the star. I don't think that's the case, but that's his claim. He says, the official said my intent was to punish the quarterback, but how am I trying to punish him if I'm just trying to sack him? It's not like it's a late hit. I didn't leave my feet. I didn't lead with my head. I don't know how you make that call. I got there so quick. How was I supposed to know he got the ball out? It was within a second. I didn't leave my feet. I didn't lead with my head. I don't know what the roughing the passer is anymore. In reality, I ran into DeMarcus Lawrence. We both met at the quarterback. Like I said, it's hard to play defense. And he recently said that officials don't care and they need to be held accountable for their errors. Of course, Roger Goodell is defending the officiating, saying at the winter meetings, we understand that's not new. We get it. It's frustrating. You know how hard the players are playing. You know how hard the coaches are coaching. We know how much the fans put into it with passion, so we want to get it right. Well, you're not getting it right. And, I think they've gone too far the other way on roughing the passer. But I just don't know what you do, how you protect the quarterbacks anymore. And it's at the point where, and Jerry Brewer wrote a good column about this over the weekend, this is what we have now in the NFL. We have a league of backup quarterbacks. And Joe Flacco, who was on his couch, just quarterbacked the Cleveland Browns to their 10th win yesterday. They're 10-5. They're going to be a playoff team. And this is what he writes in his column. He says, Aaron Rodgers lasted 4 plays with the New York Jets, Anthony Richardson, the athletic prodigy and fascinating experiment, played 4 games in his rookie season in Indianapolis. Joe Burrow went down after Cincinnati signed him to a $275 million contract. Justin Herbert, Deshaun Watson, Daniel Jones, and Kirk Cousins are high-profile players. Most of these quarterbacks were gone long before Thanksgiving. I mean, I've been saying this. We're going to have a Super Bowl that's going to be started by 2 street free agents, and Joe Flacco could be one of them this year. I mean, I don't know if Cleveland's going to get through the AFC, but he's playing well enough right now, and with the way their defense is, he may get them there. And this is with the league, I think, going overboard to protect the quarterback. You know, what if that got loosened up a little bit? Every team would be playing a backup. I mean, one of the infuriating things about Washington is they've had very few injuries. Yeah, they're playing without Brian Robinson right now, but that's the anomaly. The teams around the league, Jets started their 4th different quarterback yesterday. Sam Howell has started all 15 games this year. Whether he gets to start 16, we'll have to see. But, you know, I just don't know what you do. And Parsons is going to be heavily fined for this. I'm sure he knows that. But I don't think the league's going to change. I think that they want the perception to be that it's safe. Game isn't safe. Guys still get their brains scrambled. But the league goes out of its way to say, oh, look at what we're doing to make it safe for everybody. And, you know, they always show kids playing flag football and, you know, all that. I mean, it's just there's a big story in the Post over the weekend about how flag football is becoming more and more prevalent. And, you know, maybe that's going to be the answer, that kids will be banned from playing high school football. They won't be able to play won't be able to play tackle football until they get to high school. Maybe that's part of the answer. But what's happening to the NFL, it's not fun. I mean, I saw the Parsons hit. I knew it was going to be roughing the passer because that's the way they call it these days, but it's not what we grew up learning what was roughing the passer. Not anything close to that. Jim Mora ranting again. Jim Mora, who is 88 years old and looks like 48, still doing TV work in New Orleans. And wait till you hear what he said about Morton Anderson and what Anderson said about his former team's performance. Stay with us. It's the Andy Poland Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Poland Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Merry Christmas, son. I got merrier last night with the Patriots winning. At the moment, Washington has the number 3 pick in the draft. And from the looks of things, it doesn't appear that they can lose that spot if they lose the last 2 games, as they will be expected to do. They were already 13.5-point underdogs against San Francisco, with the 49ers playing Baltimore tonight, and they're likely to be underdogs against the Cowboys. Possible the Cowboys are resting everybody for the playoffs, but who knows? If they lose out, it's a good thing. They stay at number 3 with a slight possibility that they could overtake or undertake, however it works, Arizona. And you say, well, how could they be ahead of the Patriots since they beat the Patriots? And the reason is strength of schedule. New England's strength of schedule is actually a little bit better than Washington's. And even though Washington's playing 2 really good teams in the last 2 weeks, and the Patriots are playing, well, they're playing at Buffalo. They could be a playoff team, but they're playing the Jets in the final game. It still will project out that Washington's strength of schedule will be slightly weaker than New England, and they would stay at number 3. So that's the Christmas present that we're unwrapping today, and that's a good thing. Jim Mora, who gave us the playoffs. Who wants to talk about playoffs? That's one of, I guess, the most famous rant, one of the most famous rants in sports history, and he's still at it. He's 88 years old. And now if you look him up on YouTube, look at the video of him, he doesn't look 88. If he said he was maybe not 48, but 58, you'd believe it. He looks tremendous and sounds really good. Sounds like the old Jim Mora. Hasn't coached in the NFL for 22 years, has done a lot of television, and is now doing local television in New Orleans. So the other night when the Saints lost to the Rams on Thursday Night Football, 30-22, and fell to 7-8 on the season, Morton Anderson, their former kicker, kicked for several other teams, including the Falcons, went on Twitter and said, Saints fans deserve better than what we saw tonight. So as part of the post-game show, this was more on with the host. His name is Fletcher Mackel. And also, Lance Moore is part of this post-game show. Lance Moore played for the Saints. Yeah, I don't think he played for Moore. I think he came along afterwards. But this former player, TV guy, with Jim Mora, analyzing the Saints' loss to the Rams and referencing the Morton Anderson tweet. Here we go.
Morton Anderson tweeted, Saints fans deserve better than this. Do you agree with that?
No.
Huh?
No. I mean, these guys bust their tail out here, our players and coaches and everything. Don't tell me that the Saints fans deserve something better than that. I mean, they get what they get. They got to hang in there with the Saints. Okay, they may not, but they still could make the playoffs this season. So what's going to happen when they make the playoffs? Oh, everybody's excited and happy, and Saints fans and all that kind of stuff. Right now, they're down in the dumps. Morton Anderson's saying that. He doesn't know what the hell's going on. He lives in Atlanta, Georgia. He's a kicker. Why does he? Why should he know about the offense and defense and stuff like that? And he voices his opinion? Don't give me that baloney. That's shoot. I mean, that was 20 years ago, for crying out loud, when he was playing. And he can watch a game on TV and decide whether or not they're worth whatever they are and all that kind of stuff. That's not right. I don't believe in that. I'm not joking. I'm serious.
No, I'm letting you go. I was going to let the rant end. I flinched for a second there because I thought something else was coming. I was going to jump on the microphone.
I love Moore. We're very good friends. We've stayed friends over
I know you are.
Yeah, and a Hall of Fame kicker, great competitor, great teammate, all that kind of stuff. So, but I think he's wrong when in saying something like that. Was he asked that question?
I think he just tweeted it.
Well, to who?
Just to everybody. He sent the text to the world.
To you. He tweeted it to you. He said, tell Jim Mora that Saints fans deserve better.
All right, hold on. Before this keeps going. No, he didn't. He didn't.
No.
Lance, don't tell him that. Before this goes off the rails any further,
that bothers me that a former NFL player would come out from about his own team that he played with a long time, made Hall of Fame and all that, and come and say that 20 years later after watching a game on TV. That's not right.
Well, I don't think it's one game, though. I think he's been watching the whole season.
Well,
he might have. And he might be like us, who thought that this team would be a lot better. And I think that's his frustration coming out, which is why I say I agree with him, because this team had such high expectations coming into the year.
Now, Mora is clearly not familiar with Twitter. Okay, he said he tweeted, to who? Meaning like he thought it might be a text. You might say he's a little out of touch for that. But the passion is still there. The enthusiasm, it's amazing. Now, you don't have to agree with what he said. And the Saints being 7-8, that probably is a disappointment for them. But Mora's sticking up for his guys like an old coach. He got fired from the Saints. He finished his career up with Indianapolis. He coached Peyton Manning in his early days. That's when the playoff rant came from. That was when Manning was either a rookie or second year, maybe even third year. I don't remember. But it's been 22 years since he coached in the NFL. But God love Jim Mora. Mora looks great, sounds great, still has the fire, and whether you agree with him or not, he states his case quite eloquently. How about this? These bowl games, I call them the Yule log because they're on all the time. This week, in fact, it knocks out like all of ESPN's programming all week. There's no PTI, none of the other shouting shows that are on. It's just bowl game after bowl game. And with the NFL games that are being played, even some college basketball, this probably is not on your radar. That Eastern Michigan played South Alabama in Mobile, Alabama, over the weekend, and it was a blowout game. That Eastern Michigan lost this game 59-10, and we wouldn't even be mentioning this had not what happened in the post game happen. So South Alabama is lining up much like Navy does when they sing the alma mater. The players are facing the stands. Kind of a nice tradition. The band is playing. They take the band to these bowl games. It's called the 68 Ventures Bowl, and it was close by, so it was played in Birmingham, which is close to the campus of South Alabama. And Eastern Michigan getting blown out. They're packing up their stuff on the other sideline. All of a sudden, as the players are standing at attention, singing the alma mater, Corey Hernandez, a defensive back for Eastern Michigan, who, by the way, is 25 years old. He's 25, and probably taking advantage of the COVID year to continue to play. He's a grown man. He's not a kid. He's 25 years old. Comes running across the field and punches South Alabama cornerback Jamarian Burt in the back of the head. Just slams him in the back of the head, and then that touches off this huge brawl, and the teams had to be separated. Eastern Michigan's athletic director, Scott Weatherby, has apologized. He said, "We strongly condemn the actions of some of the student athletes." Oh, please, save that. Some of the student athletes on the EMU football team in the ugly incident that took place following last night's 68 Ventures Bowl. He said their conduct does not reflect the great pride and high standards we place on the game and our program and the expectations for good sportsmanship and exemplary conduct of student athletes on and off the field. What happened was completely unacceptable. We apologize to the Eastern Michigan University community and to the South Alabama team and their fans. Also, the coach apologized to South Alabama Athletic Director Joel Erdman and Coach Kane Womack. Erdman said in a statement, South Alabama was grateful to Eastern Michigan for taking ownership of the incident and reaching out to apologize and ensure us they will fully investigate the matter. Well, first of all, if this Corey Hernandez, who's 25 years old, has any eligibility, that's over at Eastern Michigan. And the way things work in college football, don't be surprised if he winds up someplace else if he has eligibility, because the transfer portal allows that. But you know what they lost 59-10. Did some play that Jamarian Burt was involved in cost them the game? Probably not. They lost the game by 49 points. Come on, man. And you know, these bowl games are just go on and on and on. They don't stop. And you know, the only games that we really care about right now are the two games that take place a week from today. That's the playoff. The rest of it is just, you know, it's kind of a reward. Well, it is a reward. It's a reward for a not even a great season, because all you have to do is get 6 wins now. It's a reward for not being a bad team, really. That's all it really is, because they didn't even have enough teams to get eligible. They had to take teams that they weren't going to take, like the big flap about JMU, which lost 1 game. They lost their bowl game to Air Force, but they got in, so they stopped fetching about that. And then they had to take, I think, 1 or 2 5-win teams because they just didn't have enough. And now you're taking a team that got its butt kicked in an obscure bowl, and some jackass on the team who's 25 years old decides that he's going to take matters into his hands and slam into the back of the head of a defenseless player who's standing at attention singing his alma mater. This is a disgrace. It's a disgrace. And if they weren't so desperate for bowl teams, I don't know if you can punish the whole team for the actions of one guy, but I would say, I don't care what kind of season you have next year, Eastern Michigan, you're not going to a bowl. You did not conduct yourselves as professionals, as young men, as the student athletes that you are portrayed to be by your athletic director. And I think, you know, a guy 25 years old, man, I mean, you got to know better than that. You got to have better control than have to make yourself into a spectacle after you get your butt kicked in a bowl game. God's sakes. Coming up, much more on the Commanders winning by losing and the added effect of what New England's win did last night. We'll get to that. And great stuff from Jacoby Brissett in the postgame, which we'll talk about. Plus, it was 52 years ago today. We had the longest game in NFL history. Unforgettable. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
Now.
Where you been? We got started an hour ago. We start at 9 every day. We roll till at least 11, sometimes till noon, like today. Tony taking Christmas Day off, but supposed to do shows tomorrow and Wednesday. So I will do until noon today, and a lot to talk about, a lot to unpack with yesterday's wild game. What a swing of emotions, right? How crazy was that? Like, oh my God, Ron Rivera might get fired at halftime. Wait a minute, he's put Jacoby Brissett in the game. Oh my God, they might win this game. Oh, it'd be terrible if they win this game. They took the lead. Oh God, this is awful. They're blowing the... Oh, good. Jets kicked the game-winning field goal. Washington stays at number 4. And then last night under the tree, yeah, it was left as a gift as New England won. They beat the Broncos, who were seemingly rolling to the playoffs. Like they had gotten it right. They were rolling and getting set to to avenge an awful season last year, prove that Sean Payton was the right hire, that Russell Wilson still had it, and they lost to the Patriots as New England kicked the field goal with 2 seconds to go to beat them by 3. And now, and here's how it sets up, in case you're not all up to speed on this, even though Washington and New England have the same 4-11 record, and Washington beat them, which would seemingly put them ahead of them in the standings to the bottom. If you can get your head around this, that it's better to be bad. That they would be ahead of them at number 4 and at 3. It doesn't work that way. It's strength of schedule, and Washington's strength of schedule is worse than the Patriots. And even though they play 2 juggernaut teams to close the season, both San Francisco and Dallas have great records. San Francisco 11-3, Dallas 10-4. It doesn't matter. The Patriots project to have a slightly better schedule, even though their last 2 games are not against the same quality of opponents. They've got Buffalo on the road on Sunday, and then they close against the Jets. The way it's projected out, that Washington will have the number 3 pick if they lose those last 2 games, with a slight chance if somehow Arizona wins one of its last 2 at Philadelphia and against Seattle at home, that Washington could go as high as number 2. So things are setting up very well, and could have taken an awful turn yesterday if the Jets had not kicked the game-winning field goal, the 54-yard field goal from Greg Zuerlein with 5 seconds left, or it was 5 seconds, or maybe it was at the gun, that wound up winning the game. This was after Jacoby Brissett came in a game that looked lost. I mean, the way that this started, oh my, this is as bad a start to a game as I can remember. The first 2 passes that Sam Howell threw bounced off receivers' hands. The second one bounced into the hands of a Jets player, who then set up a field goal. I was kind of hoping they'd get a touchdown out of that, but didn't have to worry about that because Howell threw a pick. And then the Jets scored a touchdown after that. And they had 17 points when Washington had run 17 plays. Like, they were on their way to this blowout. They were up 20 at the half. Howell's still stinking it up in the second half, throws his second interception. Here comes Jacoby Brissett. And you go, well, he looked really good against the Rams last week. But the Jets' defense is pretty good, and they seem to have this game well in hand. Well, Brissett comes in after Sam Howell had pretty much put up a Blutarski type of rating. He completed, 6 passes yesterday for 6 of 22, with 2 interceptions for 56 yards. Brissett comes in, throws only 13 passes, completes 10 of them for 100 yards, sets up 2 touchdown runs, including the first of Chris Rodriguez's career, and then also throws a touchdown pass. And now you got a different type of game, and a game that they conceivably could have won until finally that the Jets go down the field and they set up the 54-yard field goal to win it. Rivera's all about winning. He it doesn't matter to him because he's out of here in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today, he's out of a job. But he's got to say to his locker room, "Hey, we're trying to win, men. We're not trying to play for the draft." And the players, doesn't matter to them. A lot of them aren't going to be here next year anyway. They want to put good stuff on tape for other teams to look at them. So it's in their best interest to try and win. So and in fact, let me play again what he says about fans who are rooting for the team to lose.
This is a kind of an awkward question, but some fans were rooting against you guys today for draft position. Do you notice that, or what do you make of that?
I don't make of that. I really don't. I'm going to show up and we're going to work and we're going to play to win. Everything we do is about winning. It got nothing to do with about losing, okay? If that's what they're thinking, then that's unfortunate.
Well, it was fortunate that they lost, and it was fortunate that New England won last night. And Rivera was all over the grit and the attitude of his team, which seemed lost at the half. I mean, I don't know what the percentage was. I'm sure somebody looked this up. The percentage chance that they had to win down 27-7 at the half with the way that Sam Howell looked. But they did get back in the game and did take the lead. And Rivera was just couldn't wait to boast about that.
The start of the game probably couldn't have gone much worse.
No, it couldn't have been any worse. It really couldn't have been. You're absolutely right. It was about as bad as it could have been.
to go from that to how the game finished, I don't mean the kick, of course, but the way you guys were able to rally.
Yep.
I guess what does that just say about
the grit? It really does. I love the question. I really do. It's about the grit, the heart that those guys have in that room. They're going to fight for each other. They're going to play for each other. I told you guys last week it's about being a professional, and that's what these young men showed, that they are professionals. They're not going to quit. They're not going to roll over, and they're not going to die. I couldn't be more proud of a group of young men than the guys that came out, especially in the second half, and fought and played and gave it everything they have. You know, they have pride. They have grit. That's probably the best thing you could say about those young men.
Yeah, well, okay. But they didn't do it. They didn't get it done. The defense that Ron Rivera took over, remember this, when he fired Jack Del Rio, it was Rivera calling the defensive signals. They were horrendous in their loss to the Dolphins. The Dolphins just made a mockery of them in that game, Washington giving up 45 points. They fell way behind the Rams before Brissett brought them back last week, and they fell way behind the Jets before Brissett brought them back. And so now you've got the quarterback that, you know, Rivera dedicated the whole season to. I mean, this was all about Sam Howell, as he said back in September to John Keim of ESPN, that he didn't worry about getting fired, and that if they went 8-1, which is what they did last year, and he got fired, and the next year they win the division, and 40 of the 53 players we drafted, and it's the same quarterback, I'm vindicated. Send me my Super Bowl ring. Well, you ain't going to get a Super Bowl ring anytime soon, Ron. And the quarterback that you said it was all about, you know, the same quarterback, about developing Howell, it was all the whole season. That's what it was about, developing Sam Howell. Now, as Jimmy Carter once said, you seem to have a crisis of confidence.
We didn't help him early. We dropped a couple balls that we probably should have caught, and then that's tough, and your confidence sometimes can get shaken, and that's what I started to feel in the second half, and I was really concerned, and that's why I made the decision I did.
Yeah, it benched him again. Now, Jacoby Brissett said he didn't feel like Sam Howell was pressing. Howell said he didn't think he was, but Rivera says he's pressing, and Tavita Pritchard, I think it is, the quarterback's coach, he had said this week that he thought Sam Howell is pressing, and your eyeballs tell you Sam Howell is pressing. You watch the game, he's pressing out there. And there does seem to be a lack of confidence from him right now. Now, whether he gets back on the field before the end of the season, we'll see. Rivera generally talks on Monday. Since it's Christmas Day, we may not hear from him until tomorrow, and even then he's unlikely to announce who his quarterback's going to be. But he said after the game that he's undecided at this point as to which way he's going to go. This is more from the locker room yesterday. Terry McLaurin, always eloquent in mostly losses during his career. Had a losing record since he came here in 2019. And, they've had some really big blowout losses this year, 37-3 to Buffalo in week 3. The 2 losses to the Cowboys and Dolphins, where they gave up a total of 90 points in back-to-back games, 45 and 45, and scored only 25 in those 2 losses. And then second week in a row, they get back in the game, and this one they lose by only 2. Here's McLaurin.
Losing either way, it sucks. But when you come down to a one-score game, you start looking back on the possessions that we missed out on, a few turnovers, few missed plays that we had, and 1 or 2 extra possessions could be the difference in us getting points, and they have to score 7 or us scoring 7, and we're just in a different predicament. So, any way you lose is tough, but especially when you lose one-score games, you start thinking about, what possession could have been different to determine a different outcome.
And speaking of outcomes, you look at the way Jacoby Brissett has played in the last 2 games. Makes you wonder that a team that competed well with Philadelphia in 2 games with Sam Howell, that had some winnable games that they lost, like at Seattle when they lost by 3. If Howell doesn't stink it up in the 2 Giant games, maybe they win those. Same thing against the Bears. I mean, you look at those. Bears is a lopsided game. I grant you 40-20, but they stuck with Howell, and they continued to tell us, well, the reason we're sticking with Howell is he's got to go through these tough times in order to get to the good times. But you wonder with a player, particularly like McLaurin, who's a veteran now, who's paid like a veteran, paid to be a superstar wide receiver, and the numbers that he's getting with Howell aren't very good, and the numbers that he's getting with Brissett are very good. You listen closely to hear any kind of, wouldn't have been great if we had Jacoby all year instead of this developing guy. That's not the way he rolls, and has been very, very supportive of Sam Howell, says he's got his back like a good leader does. But listen to what he says about Brissett, and you get the idea that, this is a what might have been situation. What might have been had Brissett been the starter all year.
You just got to credit that he's always ready when his number's called. I don't think that's nothing new for Jacoby. It's just who he is. And, that's the reason why he's been in the league for so long and has success, because he's able to come in, no matter if he gets 1 or 2 reps during the week, no matter if he's played X amount of reps, like he comes in and is ready for his opportunity. So that's a guy you definitely look up to if you're any kind of player in the league, because they're always ready for their opportunity.
Yeah, he has proven to be that, and has proven to be a very supportive teammate. I'll get to his comments about Howell in just a couple of minutes. He did a very good press conference on him yesterday. As far as looking at the locker room and what is facing Ron Rivera in these last 2 games, I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter since he's not going to be here, but if he's going to give his team the best chance to win, he would probably have to put out Jacoby Brissett, and be tough to look his team in the eye and say, yeah, we're going back to Sam because it's all about developing Sam this year. This is Antonio Gibson, who scored a touchdown yesterday, scored the last touchdown, which put them ahead. And he is not wavering, because he's been a stand-up guy in the time he's been here. Not wavering in his support for Howell.
Keep your head up. At the end of the day, it's his first year starting. He's still got a lot to learn, but he's also made progression throughout the year. So, we're not just going to focus on the negative. Everybody got their bad times, and, it just so happened to be the past 2 weeks. So, I love Sam. I love what he's been doing throughout the season, and I think he's going to be great.
Well, that's what they continue to say. He's going to be great, but is it going to be on the watch of a new regime next year? Or is he going to be perhaps traded? He's he's a valuable commodity right now. He's due to make $1.2 and $1.3 million over the next 2 years. He's a guy that could step in, and somebody would want him. Or do you bring him back? And that's going to be a big question as to what they do in the draft. If you bring him back next year as the starting quarterback, let's say they don't re-sign Brissett, do you say this is your job to lose until the kid is ready to play? Do you make it an even competition in camp? And boy, wouldn't it be a ticklish situation if they draft Drake May? Because Drake May, as you know, plays at North Carolina. Who replaced Sam Howell at North Carolina? Drake May. And May was actually behind Howell in his, I guess would have been his freshman year. So he's now played 2 years there and could go back for another year, but is certain. I think he's already opted out of the bowl game, so it's pretty much certain that he's going to play in the NFL next year. Wouldn't that be an interesting situation if they do have the ability to draft Drake May? It would probably mean they'd have to move up to number 2 at least to get him. But if they brought him in here and how that would all work out next year. Lot to be decided between now and the beginning of next season, including the draft in April. But it makes for a very intriguing situation. How about this? I've heard the story over the years of Abner Haynes, who played for the Dallas Texans. This is before they became the Kansas City Chiefs. And famously in a playoff game, they went to overtime. It may have been the championship game in the AFL, the early days. He went out for the coin flip, and they won the coin flip, the Texans did, and he called for his team to be on defense. And it worked out for them as the Texans won, and I think they went on to win the championship, if I'm not mistaken, but it's called a big blunder. We almost had the same thing yesterday in North Carolina with the Panthers taking on the Packers. And they get on the field, and Jair Alexander wasn't even supposed to be there for the coin toss. The meeting at midfield, and they called for the flip. The 3 game captains, Aaron Jones, Quay Walker, and Eric Wilson, were in midfield. They called tails and won the toss. When referee Alex Kemp asked for his answer, Alexander said the Packers wanted to be on defense, which technically speaking is not the same as choosing to defer. Had Kemp not clarified, it would have cost the Packers a possession, and the Panthers would have received the ball both halves of the game. It's possible that the only reason that Kemp, the referee, double-checked and asked Alexander if he meant defer was that Coach Matt LaFleur makes it a point in the pregame meeting with officials to inform them of their choice if they won the toss. He didn't have to do that. And so it's possible that by winning the toss, that Green Bay would have had to kick off in both halves. LaFleur, after the game, didn't let his guy off the hook. He said that was a big mistake. That's something that you review with the guys before they go out there every time out. Hey, we win the toss, we're going to defer. I went to the officials before the game, made sure they knew what we were going to do. We had an incident earlier this year, and we had a similar situation, so always trying to be proactive in that approach. And now Alexander said, I want our defense to be out there, and they looked at me like I was crazy. I mean, it's pretty simple what I said. Like, I want the defense to be out there. They like, where, you mean defer? And I'm like, yeah, I guess. Now, here's the thing. Here's the big question. Why was Alexander out there at all? Packers don't have season-long captains, instead weekly rotations. When asked whether Alexander was added as a game captain by the coaches or Alexander himself, LaFleur replied, yeah. Oh, my. So that's crazy. That could have been, if the Packers lost that game because of that. Wow. Just think about it. Now they're a shaky team as it is. They nearly lost to the worst team in the league. So the Packers are sitting right now at 7-8. They're not out of it, but they're in a big mix of maybe teams that'll get in. Here are all the 7 and 8s: Atlanta, New Orleans, Green Bay, Minnesota. Then you have the Rams at Seattle at 8 and 7. So, I mean, a lot to be decided. I don't have time to go through all the mathematical stuff on this. So they're still alive, but had they lost, they'd have been out. They'd have been done. 6 and 9. Good night, because there's too many other teams that are ahead of them. You think all the things that go into all the details and all the people that are on the sidelines that are responsible for all these specific jobs, and this bonehead goes out there and nearly cost his team a possession in what turned out to be a 3-point game. Crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. Coming up, more from Jacoby Brissett, who I thought was very, very eloquent yesterday in talking about Sam Howell after the game. We'll get to some of his comments and much more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show right here on ESPN 630 on Christmas Day.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Hey, we're rolling till noon today. Tony's off today. He's due to do a show tomorrow. Hope everybody's enjoying Christmas. I have participated in my usual Christmas activity last night when we picked up Chinese food. Some Jewish people do Chinese food on Christmas Day. I like to do it on Christmas Eve. The restaurants are less crowded. There's less chaos going on. It's tough. I'll tell you, it's tough when I hear to order Chinese food on Christmas Day. So I beat the rush last night, and I got leftovers today. So it works out really well. Don't think I'll be seeing any movies today. That's generally the Jewish tradition, is that you have Chinese food and you go to the movies. But there's NFL games on today, and the NBA, which has tried to own Christmas Day, now they apparently are only able to own it now when it happens like Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, because the NFL steps in and goes, no, we're going to take some of that. So you got 5 NBA games on the schedule. I'm not excited about any of them. Milwaukee at New York at noon, Golden State at Denver, Boston at Los Angeles. Okay, that might be of interest, but that's going to be going on when there's NFL. Giants are playing at Philadelphia. Giants are out of it, but Philadelphia is not. And then the night games, Philadelphia's gone up against Philadelphia because they're playing at 8 o'clock at Miami, just about the time the Eagles will be wrapping up. So maybe Philly fans can watch the second half of the NBA game after the Eagles are done. And then the late night game, Dallas at Phoenix, well, that's going to coincide with Baltimore at San Francisco, which is the game of the year in the NFL. I think when they scheduled this, they had to figure both teams would be good. And Christmas night, they figured to have a very good audience. So they have really thrown a nice helping of Christmas cheer at ESPN. You used to hear a lot of kvetching about the games they're getting. Not this one tonight. This could be the highest rated game ever on ESPN And we'll have it for you on the radio here, right here on ESPN 630, starting with pregame at 7:30 as both teams are trying to lock up the number one seed in their conference. Both teams 11-3, and it's possible that we'll see them, like a month and a half from now, a little over a month and a half, when the Super Bowl is played in Las Vegas. That's the way things are shaping up at this point. I mean, a lot can happen between now and then, but yeah, that makes for a very, very intriguing game tonight. And the NBA, sorry, you're gonna have to take second place. You're gonna have to be there when commercials are on, especially tonight. Maybe this afternoon you'll get some more people, interested in watching NBA, kind of a Christmas tradition. But this is Monday night, and it's a day where the NFL can easily get games in. You're not going to hear complaining from players about having to play on Tuesday or Thursday. This is a normal rotation of games. You play some of them on Monday night, and that's the way it's working out this year. All right, Jacoby Brissett didn't say a thing about not winning the job this year. He did say in training camp he was competing as if he was trying to win the job, but it was pretty well set that this was going to be Howell's team. It was his job to lose, and Brissett played well enough, but, I don't know what he could have done because he was coming into games when backups were playing. I don't know what he could have shown that he deserved to be the starting quarterback when everything was set up for Sam Howell. And Howell has been incredibly complimentary throughout the season about all the help that Jacoby Brissett gives him, and this is really the first time we got to hear from Brissett. I don't think he talked after the Rams game, and he doesn't talk during the week unless, a reporter goes up to talk to him. He doesn't have a weekly scheduled news conference. The starting quarterback has that every Wednesday. So we've heard from Howell all year, but we finally heard from Jacoby Brissett yesterday after he stepped in and nearly won that game. After Howell had stunk it up, 6 of 22, a quarterback rating of 1.7. That's pathetic. That's the next step is 0.0, which has actually been done by a Washington quarterback. It was Redskins at the time, but Tim Hasselbeck did that against the Cowboys in 2009. He was almost in that territory. And here comes Jacoby Brissett leading 3 touchdown drives, 10 of 13 for 100 yards. So he completed a little more than half as many passes for almost twice as many yards, and he didn't throw 2 picks like Howell did, and Howell also took his 60th sack of the season. Now, whether he'll have an opportunity to add to that, I think the number is, it's over 70. Wasn't it 70-something done by 20 years ago by the Houston Texans quarterbacks. I don't know if he's going to have an opportunity to do that, but 60 sacks is a hell of a lot of sacks in 15 games. This is Brissett on what he was able to do for the second week in a row. And essentially, after watching Howell really struggle for 3 quarters, as he did against the Rams and a good part of 3 quarters yesterday against the Jets, to step in and do what he did, this is his explanation of it. And, really, I think saying as much as he can to support the guy he's been backing up all year.
It'll be easy for me to come up here and say, like, man, it's because I'm a veteran that things like that happen. It's just like how things just work out sometimes, and I'm literally the same thing I did last week, the same thing I did this week. I'm talking to Sam, man. It's just like some of these things are you don't know, or you learn it as you go, and you got to go through it you got to get through it, and you got to go through it, and for me, it's just going out there and just playing football and how I know how to do best, and trying to put our team in the best position possible, put myself in the best position possible, and letting the results take care of themselves.
Now, here's what he says he told Sam Howell. This is sometimes you have a backup quarterback situation which is contentious. 2 guys are competing for the job, and this would have been an opportunity for a young Jacoby Brissett to say, hey, I told you so. I've been sitting here all year watching this kid do some good things and some bad things. And, if you might have gone with me for the year, I might have you on the cusp of the playoffs. We might be in that mix with all these other NFC teams. Would 7 and 8 be conceivable right now? Yeah, it might be. And if they were 7 and 8, they're right there with Minnesota playing a backup quarterback, Green Bay with the jury still out on Jordan Love, Atlanta, which has gone back and forth, and now Taylor Heineke is playing quarterback for them. New Orleans, a disappointing 7 and 8. They could be right there with those teams. He didn't do that. He has looked at this year and understood what the situation was. Of course, he's making $8 million this year, which is probably more than he would have made with another team as a backup quarterback. But he's embraced the role, handled it well, and when called upon, has performed. And here's what he says he told Hal after the game.
I mean, I told him, man, this is going to be the hardest part of your career right now, and it's going to feel like, man, that you're in this by yourself, and it's snowballing. It's one thing after another. It's one thing after another. But I know from being in this league, man, it's the good ones find a way to get to the other side. No matter how long it takes, how hard it is. You surround yourself with good people. I hope he leans on me as one of those good people that'll help him get through this, because I know I will. And you just go through it like that, and it's no. I mean, what all the coaches say, it's no magic pill. It's no magic thing for somebody to go over there and say, Sam, do this, and everything works. It's man, you gotta go through it, and you just gotta make sure that you got the right people in your ear. You keep your confidence. You stay true to who you are, because that's what's gotten you to this far. And I'm excited for him, man. I told him that, like, literally, I got run off the field. I'm excited for this part of your career, because not a lot of people get this experience, man. And the ones that come on the other side, man, they have a better story than a lot of people. And I'm sure he'll appreciate this part of his journey at the end of his career.
That's pretty deep stuff, and that's some real maturity there for a guy who put together 2 performances in the last 2 weeks, which might have you saying, hey, I'm 31 years old. I'm going to be a free agent at the end of the year. I like being here. I might want to come back. He's saying, I understand that this is all about developing Sam Howell. And he said, I hope he leans on me through this journey. And this is the question of how Howell reacted to what Brissett said to him.
He understood it, and like I told somebody else, that's like my little brother, man. It's like I told him before I started. I said, I'm probably the last person you want to hear from right now. But he's obviously processing a lot of stuff right now, and as he should be. That's part of the journey is processing and questioning and looking inside to find answers and looking other places to find answers. So he understood it, and he was receptive of it. I'm probably one of his biggest fans on his team, made right now seem like probably biggest fans in this world, and so at the end of the day, he understands what he has to do. And like I said, I'm excited for him, man, because I know he's not going to do it by himself.
Wow. Now, Brissett may have not put enough on tape to get offers for a starting job somewhere next year, but if I had a young quarterback, I'd bring him in a heartbeat. He could become the highest paid backup in the league, I think. I mean, he's up there now at $8 million a year. But given the way he expresses himself, given the way he says what he says about developing Sam Howell, and he hope he leans on him, and everything that Howell has said throughout the year, he hasn't been prompted on that. Every time he's been asked about his development, he goes out of his way to talk about how much Jacoby Brissett has helped them. So I was very, very impressed watching that news conference yesterday. And I will be very surprised if Ron Rivera announces this week that he's going back to Howell for the San Francisco game. I would think that Jacoby Brissett would get his first start of the year on Sunday. That's a 1 o'clock game. The Cowboys game still not decided. It's all going to depend on how the playoff picture shakes out. So the game could be Saturday, the 6th. It could be Sunday, the 7th. I don't think it's going to be Sunday night, although I guess there is that possibility that the Cowboys could be playing for the division title or even for best record in the NFC, though I would think that San Francisco would be pretty much in the driver's seat for that. But they got a tough game tonight against Baltimore, so you don't know. Saw this over the weekend, Phil Mushnick's column. Now, Mushnick's become a really old crank in the New York Post, so you read his column, and sometimes you go, man, does he have anything nice to say about anybody? Not often. Occasionally he'll write a good review. And his beat is covering TV and radio pretty much, but he will throw in his own opinions, and they give him a lot of latitude to do this. I mean, Phil's been at the New York Post for like 50 years and started the media column well over 40 years ago. He was doing it in New York when I was there at WFAN, and yes, I was on the wrong side of some of what he wrote at times. It's just kind of goes with the territory. But he wrote about Warren Sapp, joining Deion Sanders' coaching staff with Colorado. Now, this is somewhat related to radio and television since Sapp did that for a number of years with the NFL Network. But, Sapp has got a bad history with domestic violence. Now, he has not gone to jail for any of it. Some of the charges have been dropped, but it's not a great resume, and it's why he's not on television anymore. And Mushnick writes, though a very effective player, Sapp was mostly known and even celebrated by pandering media as a vulgar instigator who would ignite fights pregame and during, while being among the lowest name callers known to civilization, to which he barely qualified for membership. Of course, this made him attractive to TV, thus he was hired by the NFL Network, which soon regretted and apologized for Sapp's predictably low comportment. The NFL Network nearly dropped Sapp after he was charged with domestic assault, but the charges were dropped. He was finally dumped when he was arrested for assaulting 2 women while soliciting a prostitute, though the charges were later dismissed after he completed programs following guilty pleas. Sapp, despite earning millions, would file for bankruptcy when he was in arrears to the IRS and his ex-wife for child support, yet he owned 240 pairs of Nike Air Jordans, a $2,250 watch, and a $1,300 Lion rug. In 2012, his 10,000-square-foot Florida home sold at auction for $3 million, and Sanders, now apparently who runs Colorado, figures Sapp is the right guy to mentor his recruits. This is one to keep an eye on. The Warren Sapp post-football story is not a good one, and I was really stunned to see in the last training camp, maybe even the last 2 training camps, where Ron Rivera brought Sapp in as a defensive line coach for training camp. This is an organization which was disgusting, and what had happened during the run of Dan Snyder, which eventually got Snyder out the door, and he was found guilty by the Mary Jo White investigation of sexual harassment and was fined $60 million by the league. That was going on while you bring in this guy in. You can't find another defensive line coach. So I was really surprised about this. Now, as I understand it, you have to work at Colorado, completed your college degree. So I think Sapp had to go back to school to get that. And maybe he's learned through this, and maybe this will put him on the path to become a head coach at college or move on to be an assistant someplace. But Warren Sapp's, what he's done off the field is not in any way something to be celebrated. And he has become friendly with some media people. He's very engaging and all that, and very enthusiastic. But I would be hesitant to hire him. And I wonder, I guess when you're Deion Sanders and what you've done for Colorado and made all that money there, there's not much they're going to say to you. But boy, that would frighten me, having Warren Sapp around on the coaching staff. And how about this? Jim Harbaugh getting Michigan ready to play in the playoffs a week from today as they play Alabama in the Rose Bowl. The word is that Michigan would like to lock him up to the biggest contract in college football history. It'd be 10 years, $125 million, go past Dabo Swinney's $115, which is the current leader in the clubhouse. Nick Saban made $11.4 million, was the highest paid coach in 2023. What Michigan wants to do is they want him to take this contract with this caveat, that he does not entertain any NFL offers. Now, the last 2 years, he's gone hard after the NFL. After 2021, he went after the Vikings job. They hired Kevin O'Connell, and Harbaugh said at the time that would be the last time that he would go after an NFL job. Well, no, it wasn't. Last year, he went on to meet with the Denver Broncos for their opening. Sean Payton got that job. So he's waltzed with the NFL the last 2 years, and may want to do it again. And I think reportedly the reason this contract is not yet signed, I mean, they're offering him $125 million. Even if he gets fired after 5, he gets all the money. We've seen what's happened with Jimbo Fisher. These are guaranteed deals. All it means is, and it's only 1 year. That's the other thing. This clause that he couldn't talk to the NFL, it's only for this year. So he could let the jobs pass, do another good job at Michigan, and be in the mix for next year if he wants to be, but he's not signing it. Now, this team that he's got this year may not be the same team he's got next year. They're losing some big-time players like Blake Corum, top receivers Cornelius Johnson, and Roman Wilson, and all 5 starting offensive linemen won't be back, and at least 7 starters on defense. So this may be their best team, and they're the best team that they've had under Harbaugh. They're the number 1 seed. They're playing Alabama, and they would play, if they win, the winner of the Texas-Washington game on Monday, January the 8th. But, with all it just goes to show you, too, with what's happening and all the suspensions of Harbaugh, they don't mean bupkis. He missed 6 games this year. He had a 3-game suspension at the beginning of the year, and he had a 3-game suspension at the end of the year. They still went undefeated. And what you heard throughout especially the second suspension was, well, that's it. Jim Harbaugh is not coming back to coach at Michigan next year. There's too much baggage here, and the NCAA is going to step in. I don't think Michigan cares. They're like, yeah, okay, NCAA. You want to give them 5 games? You want to give them 6 games? All at the beginning of the season. Nothing matters till we get to the Ohio State game. And even this year, they didn't have them for the Ohio State game. They still won. So, what's that going to mean in terms of suspension next year when you've got a guy that you want to hang on to and who they remember a few years ago, they made him take a pay cut because he kept losing to Ohio State. But now he's beaten Ohio State 3 straight years, and they're laying out the red carpet. And they're saying, here, sign here, $125 million guaranteed. All it means is you have to work for us, and you can't entertain offers from the NFL. I don't know. I don't want to do that. Wow. Amazing. All right. 52 years ago today, we had the longest game in NFL history. And today, on the same field, those same Kansas City Chiefs will be on the field hoping for a result that is not similar to what happened 52 years ago today. We'll get to that next. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
All right, we're in for Tony today. Tony back tomorrow, so we roll from 11 to 12. We got Monday Night Football tonight here on ESPN 630. The Ravens are playing at San Francisco as 5.5-point underdogs. And they have noticed that, and they have taken that as a lack of sign of respect, that they think they deserve better than that. Normally when you got 2 evenly matched teams, the difference is playing home or the road. So in a matchup like this, you would think the Ravens would be 3-point underdogs, not 5.5, but that's what they are. But how about this? This working in the Ravens' favor. Monday Night Football, which started in 1970, they now have a streak of 7 straight games where the underdog has won. That's the longest streak in Monday Night Football. The Seahawks upset the Eagles. Titans upset the Dolphins. Giants upset the Packers. Bengals upset the Jaguars. Bears upset the Vikings. Eagles upset the Chiefs. And the Broncos upset the Bills. So will that streak continue tonight with the Ravens playing? The 2 teams have combined to outscore their opponents by 350 points this year. So they look like the 2 best teams in football, but the 49ers are decided favorites here. 5.5, that's a pretty big spread, and a spread that most people would not have expected for this game. More history, and this goes back to 1970. It happened in January of 1970. When the Kansas City Chiefs beat the Minnesota Vikings after the merger was announced. This was the last game that a team played as an AFL team. In other words, the AFL would be merging with the NFL in 1970. You would then have the AFC and the NFC, with 3 teams from the NFL joining the AFC to even things out. And this would be the last Super Bowl between the 2 leagues. And what had happened in 1969, January of 69, was what is considered to be the greatest upset in the history of sports. I think you might even be able to argue whether it was, not football. It could have been the Soviet win, the Olympic victory in 1980 by the U.S. Olympic team. But in football, I would think, certainly the most celebrated upset of all time with Joe Namath and the Jets, 18-point underdogs against the Colts, and they won. And some considered that a fluke, but the Chiefs in 1970 handily beat the Minnesota Vikings, who looked like a great team during the 1969 season, beat them, and that really legitimized the merger. So we go a season ahead. This is the 1971 season, And the Chiefs got knocked out of the playoffs the year before. They did not make it to that Super Bowl after the 1970 season. But in 1971, they looked like a great team. Again, they were 10-3-1 during the regular season. And they had Len Dawson, Otis Taylor, two of the stars from the Super Bowl. The defense had big names, some of them in the Hall of Fame: Willie Lanier, Buck Buchanan, Emmett Thomas, Bobby Bell. They had allowed less than 15 points a game during the regular season. They looked like a great defensive team, and they were playing in a wild card game. Now, wild cards came in with the merger. So the 1970 season was the first year that they had wild cards, and they had them again, of course, in 1971. That's the year that the Redskins made the playoffs for the first time since World War II as a wild card team, and they actually played the next day. They played their game at San Francisco the first year of George Allen, and they lost that game. The following year, they would make it to the Super Bowl, but they lost that first playoff game at San Francisco. But the day before, Christmas Day, was the first time that they had ever played a game on Thanksgiving, any game, much less a playoff game. They had never played on Christmas Day, and now you had the Dolphins playing at Kansas City. And the Dolphins were kind of new money. You know, they came in the league in 1966. They were terrible. Don Shula came aboard in 1970 after his team had been upset by the Jets in the Super Bowl, and he went to Miami and turned them into winners. They won 10 games in 1970, and then in 1971, they were a better team, and they had an even better defense. They had allowed just 12 points a game. The no-name defense with Nick Buoniconti and Bill Stanfill and Manny Fernandez and Jake Scott. These guys were good defensively, and they were good enough offensively to win a lot of games. So the game is played, and Ed Podolak immediately emerges as a star for the Chiefs. He was in his third year, and in this game, he ran for 85 yards and a touchdown on 17 carries, caught 8 passes for 110 yards and a score. And he also, as we'll get to, made a huge kick return. Now, his 3-yard touchdown gave Kansas City a lead of 24-17 in the fourth quarter. That's when the Dolphins came back. Bob Greasy connected with Marv Fleming for a 5-yard touchdown. A minute and a half to go. We got a 24-24 game. So, okay, looks like it might be going to overtime. But Dolphins kick off to Ed Podolak, who takes it back 78 yards to set up what looked to be a sure thing. Jan Stenerud, the first kicker to make the Hall of Fame as a pure kicker, missed a 31-yard attempt to send it into overtime. Score stayed tied through another overtime, through the first overtime, I should say. Both kickers, Gary Yepremian and Stenerud, missed field goals. So Stenerud had 2 big misses there. And finally, it gets to the second overtime, and Larry Zonka with a 29-yard run, and Zonka had been pretty much bottled up all day by Kansas City. Zonka runs for 29 yards to set up this from Garo Yepremian.
This will be an approximate 37-yard attempt. If Garo makes it, the Dolphins win. He missed one earlier from 52 yards. Noonan will hold. 37 yards. There is no angle, but there is a breeze. Let's see. Noonan will hold for 37. The big play of the game for the Dolphins. Waiting for the snap. Somebody jumps and the Chiefs gets back. Here's the snap, set down. The kick is up. He's got the distance. It's good! The Dolphins win! The Dolphins win! Yepremian, 37 yards, and the Dolphins are in the AFC Championship game as the little guy boots one in from 37 yards out, and the Dolphins win the ball game 27-24. What a finish.
Yeah, I remember watching that, and you know, you think about Christmas Day, like, okay, you want to have some of the day left, so you want like a 3-hour game, right? No. This was like I think it lasted like well over 4 hours, and in terms of game time played, 82 minutes and 40 seconds. It's the longest game in league history. And what it did was ignite a Dolphins team that would go to 3 straight Super Bowls. This is Larry Zonka, who says that the game went so long that he lost 18 pounds. He said by the time he got to the fourth quarter, his pants were loose. But they hung in there and found a way to win.
That was the first time that the Dolphins realized that we just weren't a flash in the pan. And that game seemed to go on forever. But somehow, some way, someone would make a play to keep us in it. And I think it was the first time that we realized that we could play heads-up football with just about anyone.
Yeah, and they went to 3 straight Super Bowls. Now, that 1971 Super Bowl, I guess it would be January of 72, they got obliterated by the Cowboys. The Cowboys, who had lost the year before to the Baltimore Colts on the Jim O'Brien field goal at the gun, they were back with a vengeance the following year. Roger Staubach had a big game that day. Dwayne Thomas running the football, he ran for close to 100 yards. Dallas was a dominant team. Miami just was not ready to win a Super Bowl that year. The following year, the 1972 season, of course, they go undefeated, and they play the Redskins in the Super Bowl, and they win that game 14-7. Yepremian, who kicks the winning field goal in this famous, 2 overtime game at Kansas City, is famous for another reason, for the blunder that he had against the Redskins in the Super Bowl. That should have been a 17-0 game, but Bill Brundage blocked the kick. It got batted in the air, and for whatever reason, Yepremian tried to throw a pass. Mike Bass picked it off, took it in for a touchdown, and all of a sudden it was a 14-7 game. That's the way it ended. Miami's defense was just too much for Washington that day. But, the kind of the best of times and the worst of times for Gary Yepremian, a couple of years apart, and famous for that. And then the Dolphins made it back the following year after the undefeated season, and they beat the Minnesota Vikings in the Super Bowl, which would have been January of 1974. So that was 3 straight appearances, the 2 Super Bowl victories, the only 2 that Don Shula ever won, on his way to being the winningest coach of all time. And that Dolphin team was probably ignited by that. Yepremian kicks a 31-yard field goal. I'm not sure. I don't know if the Dolphins have the confidence to do what they did the following year. And so ironic that Jan Stenerud, of all people, the first kicker, the only first player who was a pure kicker. There have been others who kicked and played other positions who made it to the Hall of Fame, but the first one who exclusively kicked, making it to the Hall of Fame until Morton Anderson joined him, missed a 31-yard field goal and missed it at home. Kansas City could have won that game and didn't get it done. And that's what cost them, because they went to overtime and then Yepremian. And if you look at the highlights, Ed Podolak was unstoppable that day. Not just as a running back, not just as a receiver, but also a kick returner. And to think that he had enough gas left in the tank in the fourth quarter, in the end of the fourth quarter, to return a kick 78 yards after all he had been doing out on the field. Just remarkable. But I do remember that day well, and I do remember finally the Dolphins winning the game. And then the following day, Washington playing at San Francisco, and in those days they had artificial turf. I think they were at Candlestick Park. They may have been at Kezar Stadium. Don't remember, but I do remember that it was a very wet field. And George Berman, talk about bad snapping with Cameron Cheeseman. George Berman, who George Allen had brought out of retirement. He was working as a professor at Northwestern, said, "Would you like to be a snapper?" He came to Washington. That's all he did. He just snapped. You didn't have specialists like that in those days, but he had one. And Berman had a bad snap that went to Mike Bass, and not Mike Bass, Mike Bragg, the punter. And I think it was blocked, and it was probably the difference in a close game. But anyway, that's what happened 52 years ago today. The longest game in NFL history, with the Miami Dolphins beating the Kansas City Chiefs.